I want to share with you today a little bit of an interview that I did recently. The interview was with Justin over at Deconstruction Zone. He's an awesome guy. So if you haven't yet subscribed to Justin, go over and subscribe to Deconstruction Zone. He's got an amazing channel and he's incredibly kind, incredibly nice, decent human being, unless you are a believer calling in to one of his live hotlines, because he does these call-ins with people calling in and says like he will debate people live on air. And the first time I met Justin, I said like, this would give me anxiety to do what you do, but I respect it a lot. It's really incredible and intense to go and listen to these live debates with callers. Fascinating stuff. So do check out Justin's channel, Deconstruction Zone. I'll link to it down below. And I will link to the interview that I did with Justin, where we talked mostly about my education and how that led me out of evangelical fundamentalism, a little bit on where I've landed, and then we did a couple kind of case studies. So the interview in its entirety is about an hour, but well worth a listen. Go check it out when you have time. And I'm going to share just a little bit with you right now. Justin asked me a question during the interview, and it's something I've thought a lot about, and it's a really interesting question. So the question is, do we need the Bible to know God? Or even a bigger question would be, do we need Christianity to know God? And I'm not a theologian, and as I've said often, most days I'm an agnostic, but I'm going to share with you the answer I gave on the in the interview, and then after that, I will share with you what I wish I would have said. So here we go.
I don't know if you need the Bible to be perfect in order to know that the God is speaking through it, but that does open the door to some really spicy questions, which is, if you could know God without the Bible, then is it possible that you can know God without Christianity? And that is a whole different ball of wax.
Well, we had, I don't know if you had this growing up, but a lot of the traditions I've been a part of recognize, like, it is a really difficult line to walk to say like, oh, well, everybody who lived before Jesus who wasn't Jewish were just throwaway people, basically.
Yes.
That, they don't matter. Everybody who's never heard the gospel doesn't matter, because so then people would make up these weird things about like, oh, well, Calvinism helps you get around this, because then it's just all the elect and it doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, I think for people trying to square that circle, it was really tricky. Like, oh, well, maybe they had dreams about Jesus, or some people would say, oh, they followed their own. C.S. Lewis even has this thing in The Last Battle where it's very kind of like, I don't know if you know have you read The Last Battle? Am I going off on a tangent?
I've not read The Last Battle. No. I read Mere Christianity, okay. And I didn't find it very persuasive, even as a Christian.
No, I didn't think
so. I didn't read anything else.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the Narnia series is basically his kind of Lord of the Rings answer to Lord of the Rings. But in The Last Battle, there's this scene with this guy who's like ostensibly Muslim who comes in, and it is before Aslan, who's the picture of Jesus, I guess. And Aslan says to him, like, basically anything you did for your God, you were doing for me, even if you didn't know it, which was like really interesting theology from C.S. Lewis, the evangelical he wasn't evangelical, but evangelicals like him. So it's, I mean, there's that kind of approach, but I don't know. I think it's just a very interesting question. However, let me respond by saying one thing that I kind of worked out as I was opening the door to the possibility of, belonging in a faith tradition again, was that, if there is a God, actually the reverse, like God has to be bigger than my tradition. Like God has to be bigger than just, my box that I put him or her or it in, which is a lot more interesting to think about, that regardless of the specifics of whether I have a revelation or not, that if God is truth, then God couldn't be tribalistic. If there is a universal, all-loving God, it couldn't just be a tribal God. So that was me stumbling through a question that is a really good question, but it was like a little bit theological, and I'm not always convinced I have the right answer to these kinds of questions. And even like I get people in my comments who will say like, but do you believe in the resurrection? Or, but do you believe that Jesus was the Son of God? And I think what happens is that this is what I want to keep coming back to, that every time somebody tries to put me in a box of like, you need to believe the right things to be the thing that I want you to be. In this case, usually with my channel, it's because I'm calling myself a Christian. Every time someone tries to paint me into that box, I try to push back, because I think what we've often inherited is a very tribalistic position. It's tribalistic when you look at the Hebrew Bible and you have Yahweh being the God of the Jews, and they'd go out and fight other people who have their own God. And in the context of the ancient Near East, that means that basically your God is fighting their God to see who wins. And if you lose, as you often have, what happens in the Hebrew Bible, people would try to reframe that loss. The prophets would say, well, the loss was your fault. It was because you had idolatry. It's because you were marrying outside of the ethnic group. It's because fill in the blank. There are a lot of different reasons why you lost battles. So either your God was stronger and gave you victory, or your God was weaker and you lost. But in the case of the writers of the Hebrew Bible, they would usually try to say, well, our God couldn't be weak because our God has to be stronger. Therefore, there must be a good reason. So they rationalize. But even when you come to Christianity, you have a lot of the same type of tribalism persist. And ironically, early Christianity, I think, does show a lot of openness. But very quickly, once Christianity takes power and becomes a religion of empire, you have the cracking down again. Because once you have power, you can dictate who believes the right things, who thinks the right things. And this is something that, I mean, if you look through the history of Christianity, it's true of other religions too, but if you look through Christian history, you see this tradition of being able to crack down on who believes the right things. So I think one of the things that I had to wrestle with as I was deconstructing was seeing that God can't just be a tribalistic God who just belongs to me, because even in the things I said I believed when I was still that kind of fundamentalist Christian, I still said I believed that God loved the world, but in practice, that actually meant God loves me more because I believe the right things and accept the right things and pray the right prayers than God loves somebody else who prays the wrong prayers and believes the wrong things. And I would say that, God loves everybody equally, but really I believe that God probably loved me more than God loves somebody on the other side of the world. It starts to create some really intense theological problems that I don't think are that easy to get around. But all I can say is what I said in the interview, because the question of can you know God without Christianity, to me, has to be yes, because Christianity has only been around for a fraction of the time that humans have been on this earth. So if you do believe in an all-powerful God or all-loving God or universal God of some sort that doesn't just belong to your ethnic group, and most of the people watching this channel would probably fit into that category, then you have to actually reckon with the fact that God and the way that God would speak has to be bigger than the little box that you've been given that is relevant only to your particular time and place. So that's an attempt by me to do some theology. I'm not a theologian. I'm a historian. So if you can come up with a better answer, please, by all means, I'd love to know how you've worked through this question, either if you're still in Christianity or have left or whatever. I'd be curious to know if you still have a belief in God, how you reconcile this question of like, does God need our specific tradition or book or whatever to speak? So put it down in the comments below. Take a minute. I'd love to know what you think. Please. You can probably do a better job than me at expressing this. In the meantime, I will leave a link below to the interview with Justin. Please go check it out. It was a great conversation and a lot of fun. And like I said, Justin is a really, really lovely guy and a very generous interviewer. So take a minute and check that out. Subscribe to his channel if you haven't already. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I do talk a little bit about deconstruction and a little bit about modern Christianity, which is what I'm doing today, and trying my best at theology. But for the most part, I hang out in church history, Christian origins, the Greco-Roman world. I always feel the most at home in history. So that's where most of the time, that's where I spend my time. So if you want to learn more about where the Bible came from, how we got the New Testament, how Christianity formed, all that kind of fun stuff, subscribe to the channel. And that's it for me for today. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you next time.